You are not afraid of what is out there. You are afraid of what is not out there. That is the true cosmic panic, and that is why nobody truly wants to talk about the Eridanus supervoid. We are obsessed with black holes, those perfect gravitational gluttons, because they confirms a simple, manageable principle. Everything matters, literally. They swallow stuff. But what happens when you find 1 billion light years of nothing? A structure so vast, so ridiculously cold, it actively rejects the mathematical neatness we demand from the cosmos. Scientists call it the CMB cold spot, a massive bruise stretching across the background radiation map of the universe, suggesting an immense deficit of both ordinary matter and the dark matter we cling to for explanatory comfort. This is not just a region of lower density. This is absence on a scale that should break your understanding of reality. This is the universe telling us the ultimate dark secret. The default state is empty, and we are the glitch. The psychological cost of Eridanus is staggering, yet completely unacknowledged by the astronomy mainstream. They measure the temperature fluctuation, a tiny drop of 70 microkelvins, and try to explain it away with exotic theories, perhaps the result of a collapsing pseudobubble in the early universe, or maybe even a localized failure of inflation itself. They look for physical explanations because the metaphysical one, the sheer, unavoidable truth of absolute cosmic vacuum, is intolerable. We build meaning by gathering things, stars into galaxies, atoms into bodies, facts into narratives. The Eridanus void is the ultimate counter-narrative. It eats light. It defies the gravitational expectation. It demands that we confront the largest question possible. What if the universe's defining characteristic is not abundance, but subtraction? This is why, if you value truth over comfort, if you feel that science should be a brutal mirror rather than a soothing blanket, then you need to pay very close attention to what happens next. You are in the right place to hear what the quiet universe is actually screaming. The official narrative says this void is a mere statistical anomaly, a quirk of large-scale structure formation. I call absolute bullshit on that assessment. This void is evidence of cosmic trauma. Think about it. 1 billion light years wide. To put that in perspective, the entire observable universe is only 93 billion light years across. This is a significant fraction, a gaping wound in the fabric of existence itself, yet we treat it like a bad statistical reading. We look at the great voids in the cosmic web, those filaments of galactic superclusters separated by vast, dark gulfs, and we accept them as passive space. Eridanus, however, feels aggressive. It feels deliberate. It feels like a space where the rules simply dissolved. Now, here is the kicker, the mechanism that turns a cosmic fact into a spiritual burden. Everything we understand about complexity and evolution relies on concentration, on density. Life arose because matter was locally condensed. Intelligence developed because we had enough resources grouped together to stop worrying about pure survival for 5 minutes. The Eridanus void is the ultimate anti-life zone, not just because it's empty, but because its emptiness suggests that concentration, and therefore consciousness, is the exception, the rare statistical fluke, and potentially unstable. We stare into Eridanus, and we see the potential fate of everything we have ever built. Disintegration back into that primordial, terrifying chill. It is the ultimate tax receipt for existence. The moment astronomers confirmed that the lack of surrounding cluster density wasn't enough to explain the size of the cold spot, that was the moment we should have stopped trying to normalize it. This thing is not supposed to exist under lambda CDM cosmology. It is a ghost in the machine, a tear in the script. You, watching this right now, you instinctively understand the dread of emptiness. You feel it when you look at an empty bank account, an empty calendar, or an empty house. That feeling, the anxiety caused by lack of substance, that feeling is what the universe is made of, and Eridanus is the proof. We spend our lives fighting small, local voids, the gap between what we have and what we want. Eridanus shows us the macro-scale version of that eternal, terrifying deficit. It shows us that the universe itself has a catastrophic case of imposter syndrome. It looks dense from our small vantage point, but across that unimaginable gulf, it is mostly just lying. Will we ever truly measure the depth of Eridanus? Maybe. But the deeper we probe it, the deeper we probe the human psyche's need for order, and the more fragile that order seems. We want the cosmos to be a cozy home, full of predictable gravitational forces and matter we can count. Eridanus says, "Go home. You don't belong here. Nothing does. Nothing belongs there." Except maybe something that doesn't belong here. Look at the numbers they've given us. The Eridanus cold spot is perhaps 1.8 billion light years across. It's immense. It is monstrous. It is, mathematically speaking, a 2-standard deviation statistical anomaly. That's just the polite term for our physics is broken. We've been told the cold spot is just an empty bubble, a supervoid, where the density of matter drops by maybe 30% compared to the rest of the visible universe. But I'm telling you, that's the whitewash. That's the official story written on a napkin during a rushed lunch break. If it were just a supervoid, the surrounding cosmic microwave background radiation shouldn't be that cold. The models don't fit the jacket. They have to stretch the physics until it screams just to make Eridanus feel like home. The truth is much colder than the spot itself. Eridanus implies an active, powerful failure in the early universe's structuring, a primordial error that shouldn't have been allowed. It suggests the statistical fluctuations that seeded all structure. Stars, galaxies, US, had a catastrophic glitch, a cosmic pause button, and this is where skepticism becomes necessary. You, watching this, you've been taught to trust the mathematics of the cosmos. Trust lambda CDM. Trust the standard model. But what if the standard model is less a map of reality and more a desperate attempt to color in the void with pretty lines? What if the universe is fundamentally, violently unpredictable? That realization is why they spend billions building bigger telescopes, not just to see more, but to find the evidence that allows them to re-establish control. They hate anomalies. They hate having to admit that the canvas they thought they understood is actually tearing at the seams. If you find yourself questioning the neatly packaged universe presented by daytime science, if you crave the uncomfortable truth lurking beyond the visible spectrum, then stop watching passively. You belong here. Join this asylum of seekers. Now, let's talk about the axis of evil. Yes, that's the actual name astronomers reluctantly gave it. The Eridanus cold spot aligns itself curiously with a few other massive fluctuations in the CMB, a preferential direction, a giant cosmic arrow pointing somewhere. In a truly isotropic universe, the cosmos should look the same in all directions. It does not. This alignment, this axis, is statistically bizarre. Some have suggested it's merely a measurement error, a smudge from our solar system's velocity, or dust in the Milky Way. Convenient, isn't it? Everything they can't explain must be our fault. But what if the alignment suggests a deeper intrinsic structure to reality that we are ignoring because it smells too much like pre-Copernican heresy? What if the universe does have a preferential direction, and we, sitting on this small blue marble, happen to be positioned in the cosmic backwater, looking right down the barrel of the gun? It shatters the notion of pure statistical randomness. It whispers of design, or maybe non-random destruction. But the most terrifying hypothesis of all, the one that keeps the theoreticians up at night, slamming their textbooks shut, that Eridanus is not a lack of anything, but the presence of something else. We are about to step far beyond the known borders of physics into places that require a certain kind of commitment, a willingness to be wrong about everything you assumed was solid. If you are ready to make that pact with reality, show it. Lock yourself into this transmission now. The simplest and darkest explanation is that Eridanus is the footprint of a parallel universe, another reality somehow pressing against our own. Think about the implications. Our universe inflated rapidly from the Big Bang, but inflation, that expansion, might not have been uniform. It might have created a multiverse, a foam of bubble universes constantly expanding. What if Eridanus is the signature of a quantum entanglement, a residual effect of a neighboring universe's catastrophic expansion, or perhaps its contraction? A cosmic bruise, a pressure point where the physics we rely on simply cease to apply because they are mixing with the physics of an unknown, unimaginable neighbor. This isn't abstract sci-fi nonsense. This is what the Cole mathematics imply when standard models fail this dramatically. You don't get two sigma anomalies without profound, fundamental structural causes. The void is not empty. It's filled with the sheer absence of our reality. It's a tear where the light of our own cosmos is simply being sucked away, filtered by an invisible membrane between existent states. This is the ultimate cosmic trespass. We look for life in warm, wet places. We look for consciousness in dense, active brains. Eridanus teaches us to look for death in the cold, the expansive, the incredibly rare zone where things refuse to cluster. The void is the universe's refusal to participate in the complexity game. It is the ultimate refusal of organization. If the great attractor is the gravitational engine pulling everything towards some unknown massive singularity, then Eridanus is its inverse, the great repeller. It's the region that says, stay away. Entropy reigns supreme here. It demands maximum dispersion. We spend so much time searching for things that pull together. We forget to respect the terrifying power of things that relentlessly push apart. It is the fundamental asymmetry of existence. You can build a civilization over centuries, but you can dismantle it with a single afternoon of malice. Eridanus is the macro-scale equivalent of that malice. It's a universe-sized monument to disintegration. It proves that the default state of reality is not organization. It is chilling, terrifying nothingness. And everything we cherish is just fighting that nothingness, locally, temporarily. Dark energy is the biggest intellectual fraud we have ever perpetrated. We call it energy. It is not. It's an intellectual placeholder, a 70% shrug. We know it exists because everything is accelerating, but acceleration implies force. Where does that force originate? We treat it like an isotropic, uniform field, a constant pressure pushing space apart equally everywhere. Eridanus throws that whole equation into chaos. It implies a non-uniform distribution of this repelling force. It suggests dark energy, or whatever the hell is driving the expansion, is localized. It's directed. That shouldn't happen under the standard cosmological constant model, lambda CDM. If the void is actively repelling matter, then the force of repulsion is stronger there than it is in our bustling galactic neighborhood. Why? Why would a region of cosmic nothingness be more potent than regions dense with structure? It flips the causal script entirely. We assume structure dictates physics. Eridanus argues physics dictates the absence of structure. The absence is the engine. The lack of galaxies is not the result of the void. The void is a necessary precondition for the lack of galaxies. It's a terrifying reversal of fortune for physics. We have been staring at the visible universe, mapping the things that glow, and completely missing the infrastructure of the dark that permits our temporary existence. If you are serious about understanding the real gravity of cosmic mysteries, if you crave the deep, uncomfortable truths science tries to hide, then listen closely. You have to be willing to look where the light refuses to shine. This channel is built for those who value brutal clarity over comfortable fictions. If you want the mechanics of reality dissected without apology, you belong right here. Now, let's talk about the real geometry of the void, because its shape is more disturbing than its volume. We rely on the concept of homogeneity. We assume that if you stand anywhere in the cosmos and look out, the distribution of matter will look roughly the same. This is the cosmological principle, the very bedrock of modern astrophysics. Eridanus laughs at that assumption. It sneers at uniformity. It demands you abandon the easy symmetry of textbooks. Its shape is wrong. It's not just a neat spherical hole. It's a lopsided, malformed scar stretching over 1 billion light years of pure structural deficit. Think about that span. 1 billion light years. Across that distance, there is almost nothing. No radio signature, no X-ray trace, just the faintest whisper of background radiation stretched thin and cooled down, far colder than the surrounding average. The lack of observation is the observation itself. It forces us to ask, is this void merely the result of inefficient galaxy formation? A passive failure of gravity to consolidate matter? Or is it evidence of something actively scrubbing the universe clean? I submit to you, based on the magnitude of the cold spot, it is the latter. It is the signature of something that actively pushed matter away, leaving a pristine vacuum far exceeding mere gravitational randomness. This isn't just an accident of distribution. This is design. Cruel, cosmic design. The universe is telling us that the rules are local. The most profound realization about Eridanus is that it forces us to consider the idea of a truly anisotropic universe, a universe with a preferred direction, a preferred temperature, and therefore a preferred history. If the physics in the void are even slightly different, if the vacuum energy density is lower, or the interaction of gravity and dark matter is altered, then the void is not a part of our universe. It is a neighbor forcing its way in, subtly altering the background conditions of our reality. It's a thermodynamic catastrophe waiting to happen, threatening to balance the unbearable cold of its interior with the relative warmth of our structures. It's the ultimate energy drain. We always look at black holes as the ultimate consumer, the final trap. But Eridanus is the ultimate repudiator. It doesn't consume. It pushes you away until you fall apart from sheer loneliness, stretching your light into the meaningless infrared until you are functionally dead. It is the void, whispering, there is nothing here for you, not even oblivion. You just cease to matter on a cosmic scale. That is far more chilling than any fiery collapse into a singularity. The horror is in the sustained, relentless subtraction. We spend our lives fighting small entropies, the dust in the corners, the decay of our homes, the inevitable aging of our bodies. Eridanus is entropy optimized, maximized, and institutionalized across 1 billion light years. It is the proof that the universe doesn't care about complexity. It prefers simplicity. It prefers death. 4981. Characters including spaces. We tell ourselves comforting lies. We cling to the idea of a gentle, uniform cosmos. We pray the universe is at least fair. It is not fair. It is hostile. Eridanus proves it with cold, unforgiving data. The true psychological toll of the cold spot is not that it exists out there, billions of light years away, inaccessible and academic, but that the concept of it has already entered your consciousness. You now know the ultimate boundary condition. You know the universe contains structures designed specifically for subtraction, for the active dismantling of complexity. This knowledge is heavy. It sits on your chest like a stone made of pure entropy. It's the moment you realize the floor isn't solid concrete. It's a thin, shimmering sheet of glass hovering over a pit of absolute organized zero. You can't unlearn that vulnerability. You can't go back to believing the cosmic laws protect you. If you find yourself consistently preferring the brutal clarifying truth to comfortable cosmic fairy tales. If you seek knowledge even when it stings, then understand this place is built for minds like yours. We don't deal in soft landings here. We deal in reality, sharp and unforgiving. We are the survivors of the comforting lie. We invented meaning to fight the silence. Look at our towers, our symphonies, our frantic, beautiful, necessary scramble for connection. That is complexity optimized. That is the human answer to the void. But the void sees our complexity as inefficiency. It views a galaxy, warm and active, burning brightly against the background radiation, and whispers, waste. We, the conscious self-aware creatures, are the ultimate thermodynamic anomaly. We organize energy. We capture light and turn it into thought, into action, into love, into monuments. We fight the decay hour by hour, breath by breath. Eridanus, the institutionalized emptiness, is the cosmic tax collector, coming not for our matter, but for our very organizing principle. It drains purpose. Think about the fear of isolation. We are deeply social creatures. The void is the ultimate non-negotiable isolation. It is the proof that perfect loneliness is the universe's most natural preferred state. Why do you keep watching, even as the truth makes your teeth ache? Because deep down, you need to know the true shape of the cage. If that unyielding, painful curiosity drives you, if you choose crushing awareness over blissful ignorance, then you're already part of this ongoing conversation, this necessary defiance. Now, we must address the ultimate existential threat that springs directly from this anisotropic hell. A universe with preferred directions, as Eridanus violently suggests, means the laws we painstakingly discovered here on Earth are merely suggestions. Local customs, the constants we tattooed onto our textbooks, the speed of light, the gravitational coupling, are just temporary rules for our neighborhood, valid until we hit the cold spot's border. And if the immutable laws of physics are not universal, then what in God's name makes our ethics universal? Our sense of justice, our drive toward compassion, our desperate, beautiful need for meaning. These are complex, high-order structures built atop predictable bedrock. Pull the bedrock out. Show me that the fundamental rules change 3 billion light-years to the south, and the whole edifice collapses into noise. Eridanus doesn't just suck matter, it sucks certainty. It breeds a nihilism that isn't poetic or philosophical. It's purely scientific. It is evidence-based despair. This isn't just boring dark energy expansion. This is the universe consciously abandoning and scrubbing clean regions of itself. It's an act of cosmological amputation. And when we look into that smooth, perfect wound, we see our own fragility mirrored perfectly. The void is the mirror that finally breaks the illusion of our permanence. We thought we were survivors. Maybe we are just guests in a very small, very warm corner, waiting for the cold to notice us and politely request our complexity cease to be. The great tragedy is not that the universe is indifferent. It is that the universe is actively prejudiced against everything we are. It prefers the empty page. It prefers the silent subtraction. It gives us only one heroic choice: rage against that silence until the very last whisper of warmth leaves our souls. We thought we were protected by the very rules we mapped. Pure arrogance. The Eridanus reality is too vast, too sterile for our soft minds to grasp, so we have to scale the horror down. We have to bring the cold spot home. Look at 1755. Look at Lisbon. Here was the crowning jewel of the Enlightenment, a city of wealth, piety, and navigational genius built entirely on the presumption of a predictable, perhaps even benevolent, natural order. They believed they had mastered the blueprint. They assumed prosperity equaled safety. Then came All Saints' Day, November the 1st. Not a moral failing, not an invading army, but an immaculate geological murder. The ground didn't just shake, it yawned. It swallowed. This was not God's judgment, the theologians quickly realized. This was physics refusing to be polite. The shockwave hit, leveling the magnificent stone structures, and the places of worship packed with the faithful offering prayer collapsed first. Irony is a brutal scientist. Then the ocean, pulling back like a hungry dog, only to return as a catastrophic tsunami wave, scrubbing the docks clean. Finally, the uncontrollable fires, sparked by thousands of candles lit for the holiday, consumed what little was left standing. 3 hammer blows of pure, unfeeling natural mechanism. That event didn't just kill tens of thousands of people. It killed certainty. It killed philosophy. The thinkers of the age, Voltaire, Rousseau, were forced to confront true, meaningless suffering, not as a narrative device, but as a scientific fact of terrestrial hostility. They had built their entire intellectual castle on the idea that the universe was a giant, rational clockwork mechanism, that suffering had some ultimate, understandable meaning, that natural law was fundamentally fair. Lisbon was the Eridanus void arriving on the shores of Europe, a localized, terrestrial confirmation that the bedrock is liquid and the rules are mutable, especially when the cosmos decides it's time for subtraction. If Earth itself, our supposed sanctuary, can commit such a sudden, senseless act of foundation failure, if the constant seismic creep can suddenly become catastrophic, evidence-free malice, what do you think happens when you extend that indifference 3 billion light-years to the south? You realize your precious laws, your coupling constants, your sense of justice, they are all just local customs waiting for the next great shaking. We treat the physical constants like sacred geometry, engraved in stone, immutable, eternal. They aren't. They are temporary agreements in a chaotic market. The speed of light is not absolute. It is merely fast enough for this moment in this neighborhood to keep the illusion of cohesion intact. I sincerely doubt that the gravitational coupling constant holds steady near the Eridanus anomaly. How could it? That whole region is defined by things not sticking together, by massive voids of non-clumping. It is, by definition, an area where gravity is either fundamentally different or has simply checked out. And if the gravitational coupling wavers, then everything else becomes cheap theatrics. Then we are not living in a stable theater of reality. We are living inside a poorly rendered simulation whose frame rate is dropping dramatically on the edges of the map. This is why the cold spot chills us to the bone. It isn't just about what isn't there. It's about the terrifying realization that the structure that defines what is there might not be portable. Our beautiful, fragile civilization, built on the predictable, ordered foundation of 4 forces and a handful of constants, is perched on a shelf of wet sand, and the universe is actively watching it dissolve. You were taught that the universe obeys rules. The true terror is realizing the universe makes up the rules as it goes, and it prefers the rules that result in silence. The great silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of complexity. It is the universe correcting an anomaly. Us. Forget the math. This is how you feel. The cost of knowing that the scaffold of reality is failing is not abstract. It's a constant, low-frequency tremor in your chest. A psychological tax collected every time you accidentally look up at a clear night sky and remember the enormity of the absence. We pay for our temporary sanity with radical, willful denial. We choose the comfortable delusion of permanence over the terrible freedom of knowing we are fundamentally adrift. It's easier to argue about politics, easier to debate local injustices, because those battles imply stability. They imply there will be a tomorrow for the winner. But the Eridanus anomaly, the great cosmic void, strips away that comforting illusion of temporal stability. It tells you there is no future, only a continuation of the decay. The relentless insistence of the universe that your meticulously constructed world of causality and consequence is merely a local, fleeting phenomenon is the ultimate psychic vampire. It drains the meaning from every structure you build, every commitment you make, because it reminds you that the ground itself is not guaranteed. We are hardwired to seek patterns, to find safety in repetition. What happens to the human mind when the pattern breaks? Not just slightly, but at the scale of 3 billion light years. It fractures. Paranoia becomes rational. Anxiety becomes a philosophical stance. This is the hidden cost. We weren't built for this scope of truth. If you value truth over the anesthetic of routine, if you are one of the few cursed to stare back at the great void and feel the cold reality settle in your bones, you understand that this conversation is vital. The majority will retreat, demanding simpler narratives, comforting lies. But if you require the terrible, beautiful truth to feel alive, if you see the cosmic horror and still choose to stare back, you already know where the conversation continues. Now consider the final, brutal implication. This is not passive decay. This is active correction. The cold spot is not an error. It is the blueprint. Silence is the default setting of the cosmos. And we, with our noise, our gravity, our clumping of matter, our complex systems, are the aberration. Intelligence, curiosity, the desperate need to understand. These are the very qualities that draw us to the edge of the map, right where the physics begins to dissolve. We look too closely. The price of that observation is existential dread, permanent and unforgiving. The universe did not intend for you to know its limitations. But you know them now. The cold spot is the universe's receipt for our intelligence. We paid the tax in full. The final, definitive verdict is this. We are not guests in a stable home. We are a sudden, localized burst of fire in a vacuum, and the vacuum is expanding, politely waiting for the flame to extinguish itself. You cannot solve the problem of the Eridanos cold spot, because the cold spot is not the problem. It is the answer. It is the final word on permanence. It is the sound of reality checking out. We are just the echo. The cold spot delivers the truth we desperately try to ignore. We live in a universe without interest in our persistence. We are an emergent property of local gravity, a fleeting accident waiting for the void to reassert its dominance. Forget the grand theories. Forget the hope for cosmic purpose. The psychological tax of the Eridanus anomaly is the terminal diagnosis of human exceptionalism. We were never special. We were never meant to understand the full scope of the architecture. Our science, our frantic observation, was simply the mechanism by which we delivered the final, fatal blow to our own collective sanity. Look at the data again. 3 billion light years of nothing. Not empty space, but a fundamental absence of the stuff of reality. This is not entropy. This is the universe cleaning house. You thought God played dice? No. The universe plays the long game of subtraction. And we are the numbers being rounded down to zero. The fundamental security blanket, the concept of stable, repeatable laws, has been shredded by the cold, definitive evidence of the void. We built our temples, our algorithms, and our anxieties on the flimsy assumption that physics worked the same way everywhere. They don't. We know they don't. That knowledge is a wound that cannot heal. It forces the unbearable question. If matter can just vanish, if gravity can just fail to accumulate across such a colossal span, then what are we, truly, but dust particles adhering momentarily to a dissolving rod? We are defined by impermanence now. The greatest horror is not finding out we are alone. The greatest horror is finding out the rules were never real. The universe's single, non-negotiable term is surrender. This vast silence in Eridanus, this vacuum of possibility, is the sound of that term being enforced. The verdict is final. The cold spot is not a mystery to be solved with better telescopes. It is a limit that proves complexity is a fragile temporary disease of the cosmos. Our intelligence was the pathogen. We looked, we understood, we paid the price. Your life continues, yes, but the floor has dropped out from underneath it. You just know the ground itself is manufactured, temporary, and not guaranteed to exist tomorrow. Sleep well. The cold spot is the silence after the final gavel drops. Our entire civilization, built on the dogma of measurable permanence, now rests on smoke. We didn't just find a void, we found the universe's ultimate withdrawal mechanism. It never cared about consistency. It just waited for us to realize the rules we worshipped were merely local customs, not universal law. Now you know the secret. There is no safety net, only the vast indifference of subtraction. The cold spot is the final, undeniable proof that the cosmos is fundamentally unstable. Your world is a temporary glitch.